Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you on top of my big dojo here that I've got in the basement, away from the Pine Hills Palace, somewhere in Central Florida. I've got from the great Midwest one, RDV. And RDV, I got to tell you, tonight we're going back to the 80s. We're going some martial arts. We've been rotating around. We've been on a fix lately. We have a very juicy, a very ripe looking Cynthia Rothrock, if I can argue that point as we talk about tonight's movie. I believe from 86, 88. I can't figure out the friggin' years because we got the Hong Kong, China release, we got the American release. It's
You go,
frustrating, damn it.
you go by
But
the
it's called
original.
Righting Wrongs. Yeah. And this is a movie that's kind of like the she gets a little bit more time in it. It's got the 80s thing going on with it, which we'll get into and all that. But we get
Well,
to see what I think a lot, not only a lot more of Cynthia, we get to see her being a bit more
badass. Um,
domineering.
and
I don't know if you're in a dominatrix, BDSM kind of stuff, but she
so
definitely would be the one on top doing you Amazon. That
two
that's how
things
strong she is in this film.
two things about this movie. One, she said this is her favorite movie she's ever done.
Really,
Yeah, she's
I
actually
did not know that.
yes. The other one is that she was supposed to be in Armor of God, which came out the same year with
Jackie
Jackie
Chan.
Chan, but
Hmm.
because of the production delays, she ended up getting the lead role for this.
Right.
So like I said, finally a good movie we can see it really showcases her fighting skills. I mean, obviously she's been in the Line of Duty or Yes Madam, that series. She was in the first one, and every time I see her on screen, and is just phenomenal because none of it's sped up. I don't believe any of it's sped up. This isn't Hollywood. Even the main guy here at the end, the fight scene, which actually the hangar scene. Do you know that was Samuel Hung did the choreography for it?
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was a Golden Hearts production.
Yes.
This was produced though by Yuen Biao and then Corey Young. Corey Young, who actually is in here, he ends up playing in here, being one of the cop's son here. It's in this movie, the kind of idiot, adds a comedy, which a lot of people argued he really didn't need that, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, though, really cool fights in here. The very last fight scenes in here, a lot of cool stunts. Especially the house fight scene between Yuen Bao uh,
Yes.
and Cynthia Rothrock.
Hmm.
Awesome. The kid in here too, witnessing. Even the lead inspector. He's the colonel from Eastern Condors, which came out a year later.
Yep.
So, man, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of same faces you're seeing here. Uh, but yeah, you can see it on the bottom. There's the stunts where he's under a tree, he's pinned under these two cars trying to hit him,
Hmm.
and he's just like trying not to get run over and get hit in the parking lot, and then the parking garage, and then the other one he's chasing the bad guy. He's taking off of the plane. He climbs up there, and you see him where he falls from the rope, and it's come back up. It's really cool. But this movie is also controversial because they went with a really dark ending, which forced them to put in an alternative ending because the people in Hong Kong sucked. He said it sucked basically. It got bad reviews.
Yeah.
Um,
People
but
didn't want to see the bad ending. That's for
yeah,
sure.
which the bad ending is usually it's an hour and 37 minutes. If you get the normal the redone cut, it's like 96 minutes. That's the good ending where we'll get to the ending because we'll talk about the ending when we get there. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it yet.
Mhm.
But dude, so this movie starts
First
off
watch,
with a
for
bang.
correct?
Was it first watch
First
for me?
watch for both of us. Okay,
Definitely
yeah.
first watch. I watched the English cut. They call this movie Above the Law in the English version.
That is true.
Yes, before Seagal.
That reference was not lost on me. Blah blah. What the hell are you talking about? That's Seagal's film. Like, oh, that's right, because they always have three different titles.
Right.
Of course,
Yeah.
Seagal's movies are all three words.
So Yuen Bao plays the lead prosecutor for Hong Kong. Cynthia Rothrock is a cop. Uh, Basically, these criminals get off scot free, and he's sick of it. His witness doesn't show up for court because he and his family were blown up, shot in the end and blown up by by a thug. So he decides to basically, after witnessing his law professor get gunned down in the middle of the street, to take. I know, man. And
This
did you
is funny.
There's a guy playing accordion on there, and he has the dirty hairy Magnum, but it has an orange chip on it. So right there, it's like That's a fake gun, bro. That's
This is Moonraker level of silliness here at the beginning, because not only do you got the sniper on the building, you got
yeah,
the other guys in the car, you got the accordion player, which, by the way, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what an accordion sounds like. You have the 80s synthwave kind of track going on there too.
yeah.
You got the accordion guy flashing the light in the dude's face to give him the signal. I'm like, man, they're making this more complicated than it needs to be, and I love
Honestly,
it.
though, for how low budget this is better than most of the Hollywood movies I've watched. I like it. How much action packed is in here.
There's a lot.
So, and then the 80s synthwave, yeah, Israel is great with this too. But yeah, the guy gets gunned down. They get this really cool car chase. They go off this bridge, that's the raising up. The other guys crash, flip over, and then they basically are on fire after he shoots the gas tank. And then he goes back to his J job. But like eventually, because the main bad guy, at least the guys, the group of criminals that were responsible for everything, get off scot-free. So he pulls a Rambo scene here, and this is so cool. He goes up to the roof because first we see this guy, the guy who got off. He's got a suitcase full of money. There's two goons walks into this hotel over like a place, goes all the top, goes to the secure room in there. He's in there. We see Yuen Biao going up to the rooftop, tying this cable around these huge pipes, and then lowers himself down, taps on the window. Guy looks in the window, and then all of a sudden you see he just basically swings and drop kicks him through the window.
Yeah,
and like chokes him out while the guys are outside, and then he gets out of there and does the whole where he just lets it free fall, so he can get back to his car and then follow them, see where they're going. There's some other cool scenes there where it said where these guys are trying to take him out in the parking garage. He does this running and he does another drop kick through the windshield.
Yeah, but we've seen that before with Chuck Norris. So
yeah, I know.
I still love it, but still, I'm going, hey, Chuck did it first.
But have you seen it twice in the movie though?
That's true. That's a counterpoint. There you go.
Chuck could only did it once because he didn't do it to it twice.
Exactly. You weren't allowed to do it till Chuck did it.
So he decides to take the law in his own hands. Eventually, this other guy who is the partner of the other crook he killed gets taken out by this mysterious guy. We don't know who he is. We just see him kind of like he's talking to somebody, and then this kid's watching him. The kid basically hitched a ride in the old man's Rolls Royce, thinking he's gonna steal the money, and pickpocket him, only to witness a murder. It turns out to be the lead inspector. After the little kid basically goes over to Yuen's basically place. Eventually later on, but before that, Yuen had showed up and sees that the guy's dead there though. And he's like, oh crap! Cynthia catches him. This huge, just drawn out, just like martial arts, just kicking, flipping, trying to get out, and I'm just like, it is just phenomenal. It's been a while since I've seen a movie like this with a lot of kicks, a lot of choreography, a lot of good fighting skills.
You saw about the fight where she gets handcuffed at the end and he jumps.
Yes,
down.
yes, and she's like, "Son of a bitch!" I love it. Damn it, I love it. It's because you always say you gotta root for someone in here. I'm rooting for Yuen Biao. That's what I'm rooting for. Okay. And then she just comes off as a prick. Even when we're introduced to her, she's in the gambling house. The guy basically is gonna beat her up, and then she ends up. It's really cool because she takes him out too. She handcuffs one guy.
She handcuffs like 4, 5, 6 guys,
and then puts it to
fighting.
Well, yeah, and she puts a chair. He has a chair, so he pulls all three of their arms up, and then handcuffs the other guy. So they're all stuck together. And then he said she's a dick to the other guy in the office and stuff. It's just like she just came off as a total just like a chip on their shoulder.
Chip on her shoulder, I would agree with. So let's pause it for a moment. Let's talk about what's going on here. You got this sort of, like you say, overly elaborate opening thing, and it sounds kind of goofy. And I even mentioned Moonraker because it seems kind of silly, but they've got a shootout and a chase, and they've got the whole 80s, look at a card and it explodes, T.J. Hooker style kind of thing with flipping and all that. I could care less for the guns in action. I'm like, oh, they're just gonna, when I see guns early on, I question the ratio between the karate fighting, the martial arts that we're going to see, whether it's weapons or not versus guns, right? And explosions, all it's really not necessary. So when I saw the fact that later on there was a lot more action. I was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more pleased about it. But yeah, so the thing they do here intentionally with Cynthia when we meet her is I think this is mahjong. It's been a long time since I played it, but it's kind of a cool game with matching tiles and levels and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, she's in this gambling den and she's undercover, but they intentionally do some things here. So I'd mentioned a comment at the beginning about how they sex her up here a little bit. Cynthia is got what I would call a very butch 80s look in a lot of her early films with the really close hair, some of the side maybe
Hmm.
looking a little shaved. That was a look and a style in the 80s. I'm not saying it doesn't exist today. Some might argue, oh, she's very physically athletic and all that, so she's not very feminine. I would disagree. She's built very well. She's aged very well, but she was never made to look sexied up like her body is the star of the attraction.
No,
And,
no.
and that does two things. One, it allows us to just focus on who this person is that's kicking everybody's ass. Two, when we see her in this film, they intentionally at the Mahjong thing full of guys. This is intentional with what's going on, and I don't know if it really matters in this particular film, but the past few that we've had with her in them, late 70s, early 80s, late 80s,
Mhm.
whatever, they've talked a little bit about roles and sexism, just with a line here and there, but they clearly show her bending over, leaning into a guy's face, reading them the right act, and the shot is on her ass and everything else there too. And her clothes aren't revealing like clothes are today,
No, they're
but you can
baggy.
clearly see just how well built she is. She's
Mhm.
not gargantuan. She's not a muscle woman that some people, whatever term you want to call it for, but she is fit athletically. But when she's fighting up with the guy kicking, you see the muscles rip on her legs. You see her arms. She's got like a I hate to say wife beater because it's not that, but a sleeveless kind of style, which not necessarily uncommon in that kind of conditions in Hong Kong. But to your point, she's not just somebody doing something
No.
in the movie. She's on point here. She looks like she's had 2 cups of coffee and is going to kick some
And
ass because the guy's bad mouthing her when he finds out who she's going to be working with because she has to team up with the dude, to investigate the 2 guys that are dying. And of
oh,
course, we find out the
because
second one is.
yeah, because the guy who she's be teaming up, was interrogating a prisoner, or basically, or basically a guy who'd been arrested for pinching a white woman's, basically behind.
Yeah.
And he's like, "How dare you? Why would you want to do that? They're ugly. No, they're fat. It's like, why would you even care? Like, just." And she walks in, and and he still keeps doing it, and then she even helps him out because the guy's an idiot. He's in there, eating food, and he has a little thing where his dad works for him, or the guy who basically raised him. That they have a little like interchange throughout the movie. Some of the other deputies are kind of like you can tell they're just kind of like they're idiots, and that's usually with a lot of 80s movies. You get the 2 super cops, the good cops, and then you get the other ones that are kind of incompetent.
Yes.
So it's nothing really new.
We've
Um,
seen this in American TV too, so I'm
yeah.
not saying we got it from them, they
So,
got it from us, but it was definitely a thing.
but yeah, um, but yeah. So basically, she ends up, he said, tailing, or at least has him tail the kid later on. Like I said, eventually, because her prime number one suspect is after she gets basically handcuffed. She goes to court, and that's where Yuen Biao is. And they're like, she's like, the courtroom and said, like, basically, it's like, well, nothing's gonna happen because he's dead. Or like, and this is the man who murdered him. He's like, and I love how it's the judge, because at first I thought the judge was corrupt. That
Right.
it would be leaked, but it turned out the judge was actually just a really nice guy. Because he even said in the beginning, he's like, "Wow, if it was me, and I go out there and and kill a criminal," as he's like, "But I'm too old, and I prison." But he's like, "But you're young though." He's like, you like you could get out of it. It's like he's and they made a whole joke about it. Anyway, but
Well,
so
actually, I want to talk about that scene for a moment because
yeah.
there was a movie in the early '80s that had this idea, and you and I have talked about with the Dirty Harry movie films with Clint Eastwood about the idea of criminality becoming a thing in the '70s, really exploding due to progressive
Mhm.
policies. And you can argue whether that's true or not. That's not our point here, but it's definitely a theme in a lot of movies. And we talked about '70s revenge films and exploitation, and how media couldn't believe that the American public in general would like the fact that somebody would go out there and waste a punk that was robbing them or something. And so here you've got a judge that, to your point, he's older. He's like, hey, you're young, you can do whatever, and he's actually finger gunning some of the guys walking by that got off scot-free. Why? Because they killed the witnesses, right? And that's the whole point. They're investigating this. And it reminded me of a movie that I had not seen in the 80s that I don't believe we've covered here on the Extreme Movie Show. I think it was 83 maybe. Had Hal Holbrook in it, who's really great. It's got Michael Douglas in it, who's always good. It was called The Star Chamber, where some judges would get together like at some dude's house on the weekend, like guys getting together in the garage, barbecuing or whatever, having drinks, talking bullshit, whatever like that. Instead of talking about the Sunday football game, they're going, who's the motherfucker we need to have assassinated? And it's an interesting idea because, you know, to your point, there's this mysterious person that's actually behind everything. Like we always see the invisible boss. Sometimes we see it early on, sometimes we don't. Here we don't. You don't know if it's the judge. You don't know what's going on. So even though there was a couple goofy things here, this film is a bit more serious with it. And to your point, the intensity of the action, because, you know, we're about halfway through the movie when we have the action scene and the garage door with him jumping through it. It made me want to ask you a question about action that we've not really tackled here at all on all these martial arts films. I mentioned how I'm not the biggest fan of the John Wick franchises. Not that I haven't seen them or don't like certain aspects about them. And I've always joked that in the Yngwie Malmsteen music model that more is more. And of course, a lot of people say less is more. Here, when they're fighting, I don't necessarily care. Like to your point, you mentioned about the fight, like him jumping over the cars and using the fire sprinklers and stuff like that to go jump through the window and stuff. I always kind of want to see a creative use of whatever the current environment is, rather than, oh, I've seen this before, I've seen that before. Okay, 4 guys are showing up now. They all got baseball bats. Seen that. Show me something a little different. Show me how this guy, from what we've seen or what we know about him, can figure his way out. Like Cynthia, you could believe could beat people up, but she's a cop. She does have to kind of watch herself. She's not whacking people left and right here necessarily. She's trying to handcuff them, so it's funny later on when she gets handcuffed. But this scene in the garage, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
This is a really damn good scene. Yeah, it's not her, and I'm like, I like how the camera shoots some of it from certain angles and everything too. And it's not boring, but here's the thing. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes long. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the only time I ever seen somebody get attacked a parking lot like that with a bunch of guys was The Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, yes. That's the only time I've ever seen anything like that, you know. So it was kind of cool. He's got, you know, first the guys show up there, they're beating him up and he's doing his kicks and stuff. You know, and, you know, they try to run him over. But they end up, you know, pinning each other, and you see him in the bottom photo there. He's basically underneath the tires, and he's pinned. He's about to get, you know, they get run over, and I think it was really cool because this is Golden Harvest, Sammo Hung, and all of them. You know, all these guys are gonna be involved. You know, or at least they've all worked together, so they all have different same styles, and they kind of like mix together. This looks like a Jackie Chan thing, doesn't it? You know, something Jackie Chan would do, be like hiding under something, about to get run over.
Well, we know we're going to see stairs being involved. Yeah, we know we're going to see some big, heavy objects thrown so they can break. But the one thing that we've never talked about, too, is the one thing that now makes me go, next time we do an American martial arts film, I want to see if they have it. But in here, right when they're getting ready to fight, they always say something. And then they look at each other. And then the camera kind of zooms on their eyes. And you see them just for a split second do something. They have a little cycle. And then like here, like in the scene where they're fighting in there where she gets locked up or whatever, when they both kind of like tumble to the ground, they do some of the ground fighting or whatever. The camera's on the ground looking at them, but then there's a pause, there's a reset. They look at their eyes, and it just kind of allows you to reset. And so then the camera angle changes and allows you to watch them, especially if they turn. There's not 50 gazillion cuts like you get in American films or television. And to your point, it's absolutely refreshing to see that because I look at it and go, okay, I've seen these forward flips. I've seen this. I've seen all this kind of stuff. Yes, it does look like Jackie Chan, especially, I would agree, because of the furniture, but it's not funny or goofy. The guy escapes from her, which I thought, like I said, was funny by jumping down after pinning her. But it's a great scene. It's intense, and it's honestly, just long enough.
If that would have been Jackie Chan film, you know, with this, and after he jumps off the railing at the house, and then she's handcuffed, you know, he would have been like, "Oh, my back," as he limps away.
Or he'd make that goofy face. He disarmed the sincerity and intensity of the scene by doing that. Yeah, he absolutely would. That's Jackie, though.
So Yuen gets out of this because the police lackey guy shows up, you know, and gets his ass kicked, you know, and then he's like, "Oh, you okay?" He's like, "Oh, you must, you know, they must really not like you, you know." He's like, "Well, who are you?" A prosecutor. Gives him the card. Oh, that explains it. Mm-hmm. You know, he ends up going back to his place. And then he's got a train set there. A really cool train set. I love seeing these movies. We love train sets. And Cynthia Rothrock shows up and starts interviewing him. And I ask him, well, this question is like, well, and they're talking about how trains, it's like the law is like basically, but they're using trains.
This
Trains
is
are
the
always
philosophical portion of the
yeah,
show.
basically trains are always on track, and she's like, well, once they go off track, then that becomes a problem. And basically, she's trying to intimidate him, but he's basically giving her right back. You're saying it's like so I love the little exchange,
Yeah.
you know. So this is before the house scene though, before she actually knows. So they kind of investigating him, but like I said, so later on, he after the courtroom scene where she busts in and basically tries to arrest him, she gets humiliated and she has to leave, and she see her just basically kick her the door and move the door out and just leaves. He gets in his, he see him pull up in his car, and she pulls up behind him. She pulls out the gun, puts it right to his head, and basically, and she just tries to intimidate him again. And then he's like, "Will you hurry up? The light's about to turn green." The light turns green. He leaves, and then the guy behind her's been honking the horn. He's like telling her to go. He finally pulls around her and he yells at her, and she just shoots his front tire out and then drives away. I'm thinking like, yeah, she'd be reprimanded for that eventually. Yeah, so the fight scenes in here, like I said, doing the drop kicks through the drum shields. I don't care who's doing that because you really don't see that. Chuck Norris, I seen him do it in one movie. They were running and then drop kicking.
Well, that's what he did. I never really watched Walker, but everyone always said, yeah, he would just roundhouse you at the end of every episode. Right?
Good,
and that would be it.
I believe was it good guys wear black where he does it?
Good guys wear black, probably.
Probably it's one of those where he's basically on with the girl and they're trying to hide, but and he sends her to the airport. Then when she gets killed, but no, so it's like I love seeing that kind of stunts like this. There's a lot of stunts in here you really don't see. The chair scene, that was really cool. It kind of reminds you of the Jackie Chan, but Jackie Chan would basically muck it up, and then he always gets his hands, caught. So he's always shaking his hands like, ow, So so I appreciate there's a little more seriousness to this, but when they're in that whole house scene is probably my favorite of the whole entire movie. It's just
I
the
agree.
intensity between them.
Really good.
They're going at normal speed, nothing sped up. So they are. So when they kick, they block. He gets thrown down. She gets kicked in the back. So you see that fight scene, but later on, after the kid actually goes to the police department to say that he witnessed a murder. Then he sees the detective, the guy who actually did cause it, and so then again, all the guys know. The guy tries to fight him off. She has the other guy follow him. Follow the kid. Kid ends up ditching him, only to find out that his grandfather is being strangled by the inspector. He's like, "We had a deal, service." It's like, "Don't kill him." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna go tell." And the kid managed to get away. But his grandpa ends up basically getting hung and killed. But then Corey Yen's character, Dirty, whatever his name is, or whatever it is, shows
Corey.
up. Yeah, he shows up and fights with the cop, and then gets shot in the neck. But the kid manages to get away, and then the kid goes and talks to Yuen Biao, informs him that the inspector is the one that is going around murdering people. Then when the kid goes, basically ends up going back to the police department, and he's like, "Oh, you said you weren't going to do this." Basically, he's like, "Well, no, was the kid supposed to meet before this or after the grandfather?"
Well, the kid was trying to escape getting caught, so when he goes to report it and all that too, he gets involved in it, and so then that's kind of the thing that drives basically him and Cynthia to kind of say, hey, shit, we're on the same side here, right? So that's why they have to fight early on to kind of establish that they're both equal and all that too, but not necessarily working for the same team because they don't know. But that's what draws them in is they don't know who this unknown guy is, right? And so the kid's, like I say, is the driver for it because he's witnessed these things. And so now you got to go see him because the other fight that he has with the African American guy, who I do not recognize at all, when they have the fight in the office here towards the end, that's another really good fight. And it's not funny, it's not goofy. And I gotta say, for a very fit African American gentleman wearing his jeans all the way up to the waist level, and there's this old dress thing that if you wear jeans, you're supposed to wear a belt. He's got it, but the problem is he violates it by tucking his shirt in because you do one or the other. But here, of course, the shirt is a red wife beater type thing, and then the good guy's wearing a red polo. So the good guys in here wear polos. That was another thing that was
It's called
popular
a
in the
tank top.
80s. A tank top is not a polo. A polo has a collar, sir. And he's actually wearing it correctly because out of the 2 buttons, he's only got the bottom one buttoned. But the thing is, they're fighting here. This is kind of a brutal fight. This is what I would call the glass fight, because they go through glass windows, they go through glass tables, they break glass stuff. It's not
Yeah.
the kick fight or the weapons fight, right? This is the we're gonna have it slow motion, and they even have one of your favorite shots in here where when he punches the guy or whatever in the face, you see it happen in slow motion like 3 times, and it's basically like Rocky Balboa getting the shit knocked out of him. The guy even looks like mini Creed, except for he weighs probably 50 pounds more than Michael.
Yeah,
B.
they
Jordan.
don't even credit him at all.
No, and that's the thing too. He was probably a stuntman, or maybe he was an actor. I don't know, but I saw him and I thought, okay, good looking guy. This is a good, intense fight.
Wait,
Because-
no, okay, never. It's Peter Cunningham.
Okay.
They've labeled it as IMDb.
Wait, let me say this. Who?
Peter Cunningham, known for I Spy, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and The Fighter. So
Really?
he's-
Power
yeah.
Rangers.
Yeah. He's a stunt. I think he did stunts on that. Power Rangers.
But you know what they have in this fight that a lot of fight scenes don't have? When he goes to shoot him and the gun misfires, he's got that maniacal look on his face,
Oh,
and he is just sweating like a friggin' pig. They both are.
he
So I
was
don't
in-
care if that's the them getting sprayed down with a little mister. I don't care. When the gun misfires, he does
Yeah.
the flying knee into his face and just completely destroys him. Like, hey, that was a good fight.
So he was in No Retreat Nor Surrender.
Yeah,
That's where
one we have
you
not
see him
covered.
from.
Yeah,
It's also Martial Law Undercover. He does stunts for that. Does the stunts in I Spy, stunts in Machete Joe, which came out in 2010. He's acted on a couple different shows. He's been on, his latest one was The Fighter. It was Mike Machine Mungan in 2010, the movie The Fighter. So
All
anyway, what I was leading up to is basically the kid's supposed to meet he was talking to the detective, he's like, look, and he pretends to be calling somebody else, but he actually calls Cynthia Khan and tells her, like, hey, I'm supposed to meet what's so here, like, I need you, if you want to be with me,
Mhm.
We'll be here. And so she witnessed to him, the kid getting killed by Karen Shepard.
I want to talk about this because this is a great scene.
Yeah.
It's outside. It's Hong Kong, I believe, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they're on the streets. Yeah,
You're starting to see earphones, meaning Walkmans, right?
Yes.
You wouldn't have seen that in China at the time. You'd definitely
No.
see it in Hong Kong. You see Wayfarers. You see here with their jacket on, really popular in Seoul. You got the guitar playing. This chick looks kind of crazy-eyed, whatever, and so it's an open area during the day. You got all the giant buildings in the background. It's a nice foot chase, but you see her walking with the rose, and she's got this tiny little thin knife, and you're like, okay, she's got the crazy eyes things. What's going to happen here?
She's got the
and you
long,
see the kid, you're like,
knife.
she's going to whack the kid, and she does. It's great.
And she walks up to, she's got the flower. She's talking to Melvin Wong, aka the inspector, and she's like, there's a kid. She's like, go kill him, And she talks to them, and she walks up. She's got the flower, and then she pulls out the dagger, long dagger, the stem of the flower, and it's a long, skinny dagger, And then she basically shoves right into his, into his neck and kills him.
It's not happy. It's kind of brutal.
So the kid dies there, lays there, and then in what's her name's Cynthia Khan's arms, and then she sees the person. She quick runs up and starts. They get this chase scene, and they're fighting in like this abandoned mall.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh, is this great? And for those who don't know Karen Shepard, and she's a world class champion martial artist, and she's also in the Black Belt Hall of Fame. I think she's like number 8 or something like that.
And we've never talked about.
No. She was back in 1979 and 1980. She was a women's world black belt champion in forms and weapons.
Yeah, and that's
as an 8th grade black belt in the martial art of one hop Kuen and Do and Kung Fu, and she also played in gymnastics at U. So you get to see her. She's doing these flips off the wall, and then her and just see her and Cynthia Khan fighting against each other. Another really great scene in this too. So, like I said, there's a lot of cool fight scenes in this movie for being a very low budget.
Yeah, there was what was interesting about malls, especially here in the United States. I'm not necessarily going to speak for other cultures and all that because again we're relatively young compared to other countries, and things were changing with fall of the USSR and everything too. But this post-war boom kind of fallen its way into retail. And so instead of main streets, you had these urban areas, and so you'd have big areas, malls that were enclosed, air conditioned. Have a lot of them here in Central Florida, but definitely you had them in big areas, where you had any sort of populations. So their form was kind of like changed over the years. You could look at pictures in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It's definitely an 80s style mall, but it makes me feel like we're back in the mall just the way it looks, because the malls were a symbol of not generational wealth or disgusting wealth or anything like that. It was middle class consumerism, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And so it considered a sign of affluence if an average family, you go down there, buy all your clothes there, so you get entertainment, eat. That really didn't exist. You had to do all those things individually. So you'd have these big open areas, and it looks like when they're fighting, when they're running into the mall, you're right, it's a band that don't know why, don't really care, but it looks like it. There was a big push for bringing the indoors plants and water fountains and stuff like that inside. You get a lot of that in here, but nothing that distracts you from what it is.
So
And this woman who's got the crazy eyed look, again, if you didn't know her, known about it, and she's walking, you're like, okay, she's going to be this kind of ditzy sort of assassin. Maybe she's coked up since it's the 80s, whatever. But then they start fighting. You're like, this chick's got the goods, and you would not know that by looking at her.
Honestly, for being the fix a Hong Kong movie, I knew damn well she was going to be a fighter.
That's true, and that's very fair. But when they do fight and they bring the weapons out, which is a big part of it and all that, you're like, Cynthia's obviously the star, but this woman holds her own. It would make me say, what other films has she's been in, and let's watch one of those.
So, and the other thing is, if it's been a Hollywood movie, yes, you're right. She wouldn't have been. She wouldn't have been a challenge. She would have been like, and runs away, tries to fight, and tries to shoot, and then falls to her death.
Right.
So they get a nice fight scene here, and then she because they're too evenly matched, she decides to basically take off her belt, which pretty much has a lot of jagged, barbed razors on it,
baby.
And then has a little dagger, and she's whipping it around, trying to hit Cynthia. Cynthia is basically doing her best to do flips, and it's a really cool scene where she basically she does her kick in the air, and then she drops her foot down and just does the splits, for a second, and then gets picked up. It's a very beautiful scene to watch, very just the girls can hold their own just as much as the guys.
Yeah, and this is not a put down. I've said, mixing men and women in fights, I don't think generally is a good idea necessarily. And here you see two women of equal caliber going at it, but of course Cynthia's character being the good one ends up winning because, I don't think anybody that's a fan of martial arts or seen the Rush Hour movies or Jackie Chan films cannot sit here with a straight face and go, I don't know where this idea came from, if it was Sammo Hung's or if it's just a common one that we would see in a lot of stuff, because we haven't really dealt with a lot of movies with wire work yet. But here, when she's climbing up the bamboo and flipping, she does break the one piece off, and then she does the final scene here where she pole vaults into her, knocks her down dead. I'm like, well, there you go. We have a clear winner. I mean,
JC drop kicks her. She falls back, and the lady falls face forward into the cement, and she's dead.
Yeah.
Currently, Karen Shepard was really concerned about her character. She wanted her character to die because she was concerned of how it was going to just ruin her movie career.
Yeah.
And honestly, her biggest claim to fame after this was Cyborg 2.
Which is not a big claim to fame.
And then she did another one in 1996 or something with James Hong, I think it was, the guy from Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm.
So she basically went to Hollywood, martial art movies and stuff. But
you go where you can make a living. I mean,
I said whether the movie sucks or good, she's getting paid.
That's right. You get work. You do it.
Yeah, it's up to the company to basically they're the ones that end up going under because after they pay they still have to pay the actors no matter what. But anyway, yeah. So after that fight, she ends up going to the hangar. They get to the hangar scene,
great fight.
And she's looking for the inspector. She's like, I know you're in there. She's got a gun. These guys are working on planes. They're like, what's going on? And then one by one, they start attacking her. And basically, she ends up taking them out one by one. And then we get to the guy with the drill. Turns out the inspector.
I was not expecting this.
So
go ahead and describe it.
This is where the alternate scene will basically take place here, because she ends up fighting with him, and she ends up getting the drill in her because he's got the corkscrew drill, and he gets in her shoulder. And in the original Dark Ending, which was the original one, which was an hour and 37 minutes, she ends up dying. She gets the drill through her neck.
This is like Friday the 13th level of violence.
Wow. Well, yes. In the alternate ending, she gets in her shoulder, and then it cuts away, so you don't know. All I know is that he shows up.
Yeah.
He shows up in the original, in both endings. He's Yuen Biao and sees them. They start fighting, and this is where I said Samuel Hung's choreography comes into play. It is just great. And to see them, he's got Melvin Wong he's got his shirt ripped off one side. He's exposed. He's got the half the white beater now. It's ripped, and they just start fighting back and forth. And eventually, you see basically Melvin, or his character, basically tries to jump in the plane, fly away. Young Buzz says, "Hell no!" He jumps through the flames and out the hangar and grabs onto the back of the plane, starts climbing out. And then he sees that there's a rope hanger. So then he basically, while it hasn't got off the ground yet, he jumps forward. I don't know how he does this, but he is able to grab the rope. And then the plane takes off. They're flying up there, and he climbs up to the top of the rope. Meanwhile, you see the beautiful scenery, because they filmed it from their plane, how they did this stuff.
Right.
And the plane basically doing flips, trying to knock him off. He basically eventually makes his way into the plane, takes an axe to the back of the guy's head, kills him, jumps out, then falls out of the plane. The plane crashes, the mountain explodes, and you see him kind of just fall down, and he falls in the ocean, obviously breaking both his legs. That's what it looks like. There's a lot of blood, and then he dies. That's the original ending. Both the heroes die.
Yeah.
The kid.
It's like I didn't see that coming.
No, I did not
now
either.
We start off with overly elaborate execution scene.
Yeah, I was like, dang. It's like, so the people of Hong Kong were so pissed off. This is such a horrible ending. They redid it. They shortened it down. He still falls into the water, and he is near death. These two naval ships come up. You see it's Cynthia on there with their armor in a sling, and they basically pull on the shore. And then it cuts to him where he's in the court scene, and he's sentenced to 8 years in prison, and that's how it ends for alternative meaning.
Yeah. So from my perspective, because this pretty much is when the film ends. Thank you, 80s films, for ending as soon as the thing needs to be over.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was an alternate ending for it. So again, noticing there wasn't necessarily a lot of humor in this film. It's not like it's morbid or anything like that. The stunt work is great. There's a lot of good action in it. The weakest stuff is the gun stuff. Even the kids' involvement didn't bug me too much. But an interesting way to choose how to end a film. But why would you? I just don't understand why you would do this. It doesn't make sense to kill him one off maybe, but both. I guess the question is, Cynthia's a rising star. Do you kill her off so people want to see her in the next film as a studio decision and let the main guy live? I don't know.
I don't know, man. But stunt scene when he's on the plane, when it's actually in the air, looks like it's in the air. That's not really in the air, or at least it was for a little bit. And then they obviously when he jumps, that's actually he was on a wire, touch cable. So when he actually jumped, the wire actually broke. And he landed face forward down onto the mattress with his legs behind his back. And they thought he was like dead at that moment. He said, and he was fine.
Yeah.
But he said he's like, that was the most scariest moment of his doing this stuff.
There's one thing for saying, what are we going to do in this spot? What kind of stunt do we want? Are we going to have somebody jumping? We're going to have somebody flipping, whatever. How are we going to do? Where are we going to go through? Whatever. Obviously I don't really know how that decisions are made besides insurance, right? Because that's why Jackie had to bring his crew back to the United States. But I think that the choice of what they did here is pretty good. I think it could have been tied up more if you just get rid of some of the gun stuff. I guess it's the 80s. You can't escape it. But I will say this about the ending. I agree it's not the right ending. That being said, I almost didn't have a problem with it in a sense because I wasn't expecting it. I was like, well, shit, I didn't expect that because the hangar fight he's having with the bad guy right at the end.
Yeah,
turns out they knew they knew of him. He was the secret guy that was there all along. Let you guys figure that out. But he was a jacked physical dude. He looked like he could kick some ass. I really thought, okay, this is one of those things where the guy's not a wimp. He's not a sniveling idiot. It's gonna, whatever at the end. He looked like a legit badass. So they're having a really good fight, and it gets to the plane. To me, the movie's over at that point because I really wanted to see them fighting more in the hangar. But they had to go 80s style, right? They had to overdo it. They had to get in the plane. They had to have him dragging on the runway. They had to have him climbing the plane. We've seen this before, and it's kind of cool, but it gets a little old because that's not what we want to see. They have the fight in the plane, which wasn't much, but then You finish him off with an axe. Okay, it worked.
Honestly, I
I
thought it was.
didn't see it
I loved.
coming.
I loved it all. I mean, of course, them dying in the end. I think is that whenever you have a hero and you're trying to get someone to room and then to kill them off, and like you said, you kill off everyone. What the hell? One
Well,
person, sure.
a character or somebody else you like
Or
to think gets the rub from that, right?
so here's my thought was like maybe you have him like lay there like and you think he said maybe they're thinking they're gonna do a sequel, because you don't know if he's dead or not. You just see him laying there. Would have been great if he jumped in the water and then that's it.
Right.
And he's gone, and Cynthia's looking for him. He's so he comes back as a vigilante in the next one or whatever. He's
Exactly.
yeah. It's like you could leave it open, but yeah, it just you don't kill the main character, unless
If there's a point to it, yes.
unless he crossed the point, he starts killing innocents like Gerard Butler apparently,
Right.
and law-abiding citizens.
Don't get me started. You're trying to trigger me.
Yes, and Anthony is correct. I was going to bring up 88 films off as a random feature for the random ending for the characters. Example, the lives and whoever dies and vice versa. They have a collection you can go buy. I saw it's Region B. I'm not sure if my Blu-ray player will play a Region B United Kingdom stuff. I think it will, but they do sell the actual movie, the one we watched, the Dark Ending. That's I've seen that on Amazon and some other places for like it's Region A is what we are. And yeah, so that's going. But I just saw that 88 Films also has and for U.S. release in the whole 1 through 4 of in the Light of Duty complete box set.
They have nice collections. I haven't gotten anything from there, but I mean, I assume this is just a physical Blu-ray that you can get, and it's also, I would call it untouched, where they haven't like the James Bond films I made mention
Unrated.
2 weeks ago that they're going through and they're re-editing James Bond films so you don't see him smoking, which is bullshit. If I'm going to buy a UHD 4K Blu-ray, whatever it is, the high-end kind of thing, I want everything because you and I've talked about this before with the proliferation of DVDs in the secondary market in the 90s, particularly here in the States. You had the ability to have like deleted scenes or special things. It made you want to go out and buy and have a copy of the movie as opposed to seeing it, not necessarily not seeing it in the theater, but if you saw it in the theater and you're like, man, I can't wait till this comes out in a DVD and then I can watch the behind the scenes or the director's cut or God forbid the thing that sometimes, depending on who it was, when you would get them talking over all the scenes and what they did about it, some of that stuff is gold. Some of it sucks. But it was new, it was unexplored, and I would argue that even though 90s films I don't think were great compared to say the 80s or even 70s, there was still that excitement of going out and getting them, seeing them, and then also if on the secondary market that you could get these kinds of little additional things. It was new for the viewing experience.
Yeah, and the writers for this were the same writers who did worked on Armor of God with Jackie Chan. They also worked on Isa Condor.
Okay.
So you're actually getting some good quality. As you notice that some of the films, and sometimes the writers will change, but Golden Harvest like to keep a lot of the same writers because this is the way it fit the choreography, the storytelling, it all fit together. Honestly, so I'm looking forward to checking out more of this stuff. Obviously, we're gonna watch some more Jackie Chan stuff reviewed on here. It's no doubt about that. More Cynthia Rothrock. She's got a list that goes into the 90s. More Donnie Yen. And some more just Yuen Biao. If I can find some more, he's been popping up in a lot of the. I noticed that him, Jackie Chan, and Sammo Hung were in a movie called Dragons Forever, which came out in 1988. Another comedy stuff, but through 3 lawyers. I might check that out myself. It's a TV-14 film, whatever. But
yeah, and again, here in the United States, here in Florida, and of course you're in the Midwest. Depending on what services you have, you may or may not have access to these. I found this legally, of course, on the Internet Archive. We always have a tendency to plug Tubi television.
Daily Motion.
What's that?
Daily Motion is where I find most of my martial arts stuff now.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of listeners overseas, so I don't know. Depending on what access they have to certain things and all that, you may or may not have it. Daily Motion does have a lot.
This is available through those are Amazon Prime members. They have the premium subscriptions called Haya. This is on there too. That's another their own Amazon Prime has their own thing. You can subscribe to that channel. It's called our streaming service called Haya. It's all martial arts. So,
final thoughts.
Final thoughts, dude. Dude, this was fun. I obviously better than the last one we reviewed, Tiger Cage, I think it was. Um, I'm thinking about we should do Tiger Claw, with another Rothrock movie or something like that. You
Yeah,
know,
we've been alternating through some different
and
people on here because we've been in a martial arts phase right now,
it's
if it's springtime or what,
it's
but
not
it's been
even
long overdue.
like I said. I don't care about the story as much as I care more about the fighting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Story's just got
So
to be good
so
enough for you to follow, so that you say, okay, now he's got to kick ass. And I love the '80s thing of fighting in a mall.
yeah.
It's the equivalent of a bar fight.
Well, the reason you're in the mall because another fight mall because look at Police Story. And like I said, this is the Golden Harvest getting involved with this.
I'm waiting for us to catch one of these '80s films where, not that they're necessarily fighting in a mall, which is always cool from my perspective, being an '80s kid. I want to see fighting in a strip club. I just do, right?
Well, I've only ever seen fighting in a strip club as Beverly Hills Cop. Uh,
Just saying.
but no, we've seen people fighting on a plane, fighting on a train, fighting in a parking garage, fighting in a house, in a mall. What's left?
Amusement park. We had a great one. I think that was a Jackie Chan one.
Jackie Chan one, yeah, he's climbing up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like that one a lot. A
yeah,
fun house, a
yeah,
haunted house.
yeah,
You just put the fighting where a bus, right? Am I
yep,
right? Come on,
yeah.
maybe a double decker bus. That would be kind of cool.
Well, there's what Don Lee was the other one. Was Korean Chuck Norris over on Train to Busan. Like I said, we're always looking for basically if you guys have recommendations for this. This is obviously thank you for recommending this to us. I think it was I think it was maybe Anthony. I know Anthony's been on and a few other people. I forget their names. They've been basically recommending movies. So if you have movies that we are not in our list that you think we should watch that are similar to the stuff like this, let us know. Obviously, I don't like watching the Wire stuff, like like Crouch Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This is more my alley here. This had the perfect balance of guns and fighting for me.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I mentioned it before when we've talked about, say, horror movies. If you get like a jump scare or jump scene, okay, it might make you startle, it might make you jump in your seat a little bit, but in and of itself, not scary. You can argue the difference between horror and thriller might be a thriller might be something where you anticipate something happens, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what scares you, as opposed to it being actualized, which would be somebody slitting your throat or whatever it might be in a horror movie, or something else. And so it's kind of tough because it's very easy to do cheap shit stuff and for people to think it's scary. When you have but the idea is that if you have a scary movie and you have your best scene early on, well, does it make the rest of the movie worse? Do you need to get hooked by something? You and I have talked a little bit about themes
Yeah.
here on Extreme Movie Show, and one of them I always talk about, you mentioned it earlier, I'm going to bring it up again, is that you want to have somebody to root for. Obviously, one of the issues I have with some of these international type releases, and I'm simply saying this as a first time viewer on some of these films, is that I know who Cynthia Rothrock is. I've seen a lot of her stuff. I was introduced to more of her '90s late night USA up all night crap than this stuff. So it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to see it because I always thought, oh, she's somebody I liked seeing. But I always felt like when she's advertised for a role, like a Jackie Chan or Samo, that whoever their character is, that's who I want to root for. To your point, don't really care too much about the story because the story's not why we're watching. We want exotic locations, sexy looking people, different quality of fights. But the thing with horror movies or people or this or that, and one of the things I think they really nailed in this film is this: you can't have a lot of talking and stupid shit. Get us hooked in early. Have people do stuff when things happen. We learn about them. On our Columbo review that we just do, we always talk about every scene. You can clearly see how they start it. They're talking, something's going on, something's happening. There's always a second layer of communication going on, and then the scene ends. It's a collection of scenes. In a martial arts film in particular, I think it's very important that you have a couple of really key scenes that you can go away and go, there was the such and such fight, or when such and such happened. I still think of the last one, even if I forgot the name, if somebody mentioned it to it, they went, oh, the one where that ninja blows up on the flagpole, I would laugh and go, oh yeah, that one. Here, you've got actually no bad scenes, which is hard to do. But when I look at it, you've got the garage fight, you've got the mall fight, and actually the opening assassination isn't bad, but it pales in comparison to the stuff you get later. And so to me, I think this has an above average amount of scenes, fighting scenes. The house scene's great. I just go, yeah, it's got 3 or 4 really great scenes in there. It's worth watching for that alone. And I think that's how you and I kind of talk about the value
Mhm.
that a martial arts movie has. You know, is the action really good? Does it make you want to go see something else they do? And for this, me, I was so pleasantly surprised. The answer for this movie is yes.
Yep.
Anything else?
No. Excited. You guys have recommendations? Let us know down in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for all showing up. Anthony Marania, Jim Sorensen, Verity. It's great to see you again. Haven't seen you in a while. Verity says finally get to see us Sunday show. We're available on, or also doing the stuff on Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys can check that out, that's on there too as well. And other than that, see you guys on Tuesday.
Good night now.
Later, guys.